Blog Talk Radio.
Good evening. This is Jane Hoffman, and tonight's episode is going to involve some legalistic points of view regarding the criteria America has for politics and how that applies in everyday situations. I'm drawing upon my master's in political science reference points as a way to kind of like detect certain flaws in the system and how that can be applied. We're going to try to move away from a point of view where people are constantly imposing their subjective will on others. Last week we had a crisis in confidence on our own show in which one particular host kept imposing his view in a way that was not from a sharp intellectual standpoint, but rather a way to embrace his ideas and coddle them in an ideology that was detrimental to the show's objective. But let's just skip over that tonight for now, and we're going to move on to the new topic. The Federalist No. 10 is an essay written by James Madison as the 10th in the series of Federalist Papers. It was initiated by Alexander Hamilton in his pledge to argue for ratification of the U.S. Constitution. It was published in 1787 under the pseudonym Publius, and it is one of the most highly regarded of all writings. John Jay, Alexander Hamilton, and Madison were the three co-founders. Now, at that time, you remember there were many different versions of the Constitution, including the Virginia version and the New Jersey version. Anyways, number 10 addresses the question on how to guard against factions or groups of citizens with interests contrary to the rights of others or interests of the whole community. Madison saw factions as inevitable due to the nature of man, being that as long as men hold differing opinions, having different amounts of wealth, and owning different amounts of property, they will continue to form alliances with people who are most similar to them, and they will sometimes work against the public interest and infringe upon the rights of others. Thus, he questions how to guard against those dangers. Now, that's interesting that he brings up the condition of wealth, property, and probably level of income, too. In those days, there was a lot of old concentrated wealth, and people were categorized, there were several people emigrating to the country at the time, and I'm pretty sure that the wealthy were more like-minded than some of the poor laborers. Federalist No. 10 continues a theme begun in Federalist No. 9, titled The Same Subject, the Utility of the Union as a Safeguard Against Domestic Faction and Insurrection. The whole series is cited by scholars and jurists as an authoritative interpretation and explication of the meaning of the Constitution. Madison argued that partisanship is inevitable, and he suggests a representative republic. Now, the reason I'm bringing up the faction, the group of citizens, is because in every society, and this was talked about in Mark Twain's book, Huckleberry Finn, there's the notion of mob rule, and there's also the notion of minority factions. Now, minority factions are groups of people that are sometimes are unpopular, and what it does is there has to be protection of the minority faction in order for civil society to be run in a smooth manner. Now, I'll give you three examples of modern-day topics of minority factions. That would be Muslims, gays, and Black Lives Matter movement. In other words, the Black Lives Matter movement is a stronghold in our society that was developed after a period of 5 or 6 incidents occurred where it seems like black people were being murdered unjustly and without police forethought. Gays are people who are definitely a minority faction. They're 1 to 2% that have fought for their rights civilly for the last 25 to 40 years and have now achieved same-sex marriage. Muslims are a minority in the United States, less than 10%. And today in Minneapolis there was a bombing. It occurred actually in the middle of the night, like around 4 a.m. before morning prayer. Luckily, it happened in a utility room where nobody was hurt, and the FBI is unsure how it got planted. But because it was in a place of religious worship, it's already tagged as a hate crime and investigated by a different source of federal authority. In this case, when it infringes on people's religion, the right to practice religion or race, and major categories like that, it can be considered a hate crime. I'm going to see if any of my co-hosts have called in yet. I thought we could take a more clinical approach, and talk about mob rule and minority factions, because I do want to break a... thank you for calling in, Ben and Don. I'll pull you in 2 seconds. The reason I'm bringing up this Federalist Paper number 10 tonight is because it can be applied to everyday conflict in America that we see brewing. For example, the amount of people demonstrating against the mainstream candidacies in the 2016 election can be broken down into several minority factions, including a group we discussed a few weeks ago named Antifa, which is more of an international group. The Bernie movement was a political movement. It wasn't really a minority faction, but it was the antithesis of rejecting majority party political parties in order to serve us. In other words, it was an outside faction. One thing we have to keep in mind is you cannot protect every group. For example, when the KKK is demonstrating around the country, as they often do, whether in South Carolina or one time they demonstrated in Colorado because they didn't want the Martin Luther King holiday accepted in 1979, so they protested the year before. Not all minority factions deserve the protection of the federal government. If they're a hate group or they're directly infringing on the rights of other people, then I think they should be watched, but they shouldn't be protected. With that, I'm going to pull Don and Ben in. And I have not heard from Albert all day, so I don't know what's going on with Albert. Good evening, folks. You can say hi in alphabetical order.
How's it going?
Pretty good.
Hi there.
Hi, Don. I did get your last few texts, Ben, but I'm not able to watch things right in the last minute before the show.
Oh, yeah. Yeah,
but I did watch part of your
thing.
video on Debbie Wasserman Schultz, and also, I'm not sure if my German relative's calling in tonight. His wife said he was sick, so it's a iffy situation, 50-50. How's everyone doing tonight? And have you noticed any headline news that really that caught your attention this week?
Go ahead, Don. You know anything?
Yeah, well, one of the main things that I saw that when I was coming out of Baltimore was that Missouri passed a travel advisory for black people going through because they know that they're going to get stopped. That was one of the main news items that I saw because it's about time. We've got to...
Well, how do they implement that, and what do you mean by a travel advisory?
They're saying that when you pass through the state of Missouri, cross those state lines, you are at risk of getting some sort of action taken upon you just because of your race. But what was the first thing? Was
that a state mandated thing, or was that from a political group? Because it seems like you couldn't really legally do something like that. Could you?
I read about that.
No. It's only an advisory. It's not a law or anything that would be a resolution. It'd be more like a resolution. It wouldn't be a law per se.
I was under the impression it was the NAACP that came out with that announcement, and it seemed like more of what?
That's why I think that's why it got my attention so much, because I think it is.
It is the NAACP. I just looked it up.
Right.
So
it tells travelers to be careful, exercise caution while driving through Missouri.
Well, it's about time. Do
you guys remember Amy Goodall? She's a national columnist. Amy Goodman, I mean.
Yeah.
Dred Scott, right? Yeah, Dred Scott was buried a couple miles from where that Ferguson thing happened in Missouri, and she kind of commented on that during that time. Like, she was making a parallel, like he was buried just a couple miles away from where that whole epicenter or that Ferguson happened situation.
Okay. All right. So, what's your point?
Nothing. I was just making a historical reference. Let me just read one sentence from this Jefferson City, Missouri article. The state NAACP has strongly criticized legislation which could make it tougher to hold people accountable for harassment and discrimination against women, people with disabilities, and others. At this point, the NAACP said everybody's civil rights are now in jeopardy. I guess there was some type of legislation on the desk of Republican Eric Greitens, who has not said whether he'll sign a bill that supported efforts to rein in lawsuits in an attempted way to improve the legal climate for business in the state. I don't know what the hell that means. But thanks for bringing it up.
Legal. What was that word?
There's some kind of legislation that promulgated the NAACP to do this.
Right.
I know. I read this article too, and the first thing I thought was, wow, it must have been something that the government officials in Missouri did to make people afraid. But I'm starting to think it was just a political inflammatory statement to put pressure on this bill. And I guess this bill is being put through to protect businesses from so many frivolous lawsuits. Not to say that they're all frivolous, but so a business can fire somebody without being sued for discrimination every single time.
Albert is on the line. Here's part of the backstory, okay? The advisory committee follows a accumulation of issues that are critical to civil rights in Missouri. Other issues cited in the advisory includes a recent Attorney General report that shows black Missouri drivers last year were 75% more likely to be stopped than whites. The NAACP in February launched an economic boycott in North Carolina over the state's so-called bathroom bill, as well as an ongoing legal fight over voting rights. In May, the ACLU issued a warning about traveling to Texas because of the state's new law banning so-called sanctuary cities. Now, that would apply also to Latino people if they were illegals driving in those states.
If you heard what he said, it was pertaining to anybody of color and women and other
children. Yeah.
Lord. So that's
Okay, we covered that. Now, before I pull Albert in, did you guys get the gist of what I was saying in the beginning of the show about Federalist Paper number 10, where there's always going to be minority factions, that a group of citizens with like interests that will need to be protected, and also differing opinions, different degrees of wealth, and different alliances of people are going to forge different types of factions that could turn into mob rule if they're not controlled and contoured by the government. And we've seen a couple hints of that in the last 2 years in American society, where it seemed like people even fighting for justice issues were going to get borderline unruly and kind of like buck all the laws of the land. So I don't know how much of a government background you guys have, but James Madison wrote about it in the Federalist Paper 10.
Right.
I just thought I'd use that as a theme tonight because Minnesota is one of the most diverse, equitable states, but now in the last year we had a cop kill Philando Castile, we had a mosque partially blown up today, and a few weeks ago that Australian woman was killed by a Somalian cop who didn't seem to have proper police training. So Minnesota's kind of been a hot spot for crappy things happening in the last year or two. Albert, you're on the line.
Yep, I'm here.
Hi, we're talking about the notion written in the Federalist Papers, which was kind of like the forerunner of the Constitution, where how does government and society as a whole control minority factions, mob rule, if the rule of law is being thwarted? So does anybody want to go first?
Well, the mob hasn't ruled at all. Every time the mob tries to go out there, and the mob gets beat up by the police, sent to jail, for the whole day or whatnot, and then when they go out, if they pay the bail bond, they have to pay a big fee, maybe $1,000 or whatever, to get out of jail, and go through all that just to protest. That's what happens to the mob. So the mob don't rule.
Well, what percentage of the mob do you think that really happens to, though?
Well, it happens to, it depends where you're at and what time, like what kind of protest or what's happening and what's going on. And it depends what you get taken in for. If you get taken in for, like, not just like, let's just say you're protesting and they book you in and they throw the book at you for rioting, for having drugs on you, for intending to start a violence, intending, trying to assault a police officer, you know what I mean? They can throw the whole book at you and get you for all of that, So so there's ways.
That's individually. That's all individually, though. I think you can look at.
I want to bring up a point before Ben gets too far into it. Remember, what one of the biggest mob rule factions in our society is right now? The uneducated Trump supporters that show up at the rallies. They are in a consensus thinking that the world is against Trump, that he's being misrepresented, and they have the capability of fighting back if they're not going to get their way.
Yeah, like the majority of them happen to be white folks for some reason.
Agreed. Ben, what were you going to say?
I was going to say that you can look at what's happening at universities it's a smaller scale of what's happening on the United States, except the roles are reversed. The people that get bullied at universities are usually conservative kids, and the umbrella of protected classes of people keeps growing. So if there's only a handful of conservatives at a large college, and all these different ethnic backgrounded people are falling under the same umbrella politically, then those handful of kids are outnumbered. And you can see how many times
that reminds me
a year
of something. That's a good point. It reminds me of something. Remember in 1964 when Berkeley had I think it was 66 actually, they had a free speech movement. They took over the campus. They even surrounded a police car and walked on it and disabled it, like the cop couldn't move. And their whole point was that their campus was somewhat autonomous. They could express, because what the university was doing is they were trying to limit what groups could talk, what groups could form committees, what groups could be vocal. So they decided to have this free speech movement where they occupied certain admin halls and classroom halls, and they did it for 3 to 4 days, including surrounding the cop car that I talked about. Well, now there's different kinds of campus occupations where one lone lunatic, like at Virginia Tech University, goes and shoots a bunch of people. So that's another kind of mob rule where it's an individual or 1 or 2 people acting nutty and using force to impose some kind of radical view that nobody's ever going to understand.
That's not really a mob rule, though. If it's a lone wolf, a disgruntled person, that's on them. That's not the whole mob coming
right, I know that's kind of a bad example, but I'm just showing you, I'm trying to demonstrate that there's more anomalies nowadays where, whether it's in a elementary school or a college, where you're right, it's not really a political group. You're right, I'll just delete that. But I want to give you 2 more things to think about. Madison wrote, there were 2 ways of removing the causes of factions or political parties. The first was to destroy the liberty essential to their existence. This remedy would be worse than the disease. The second was to give everyone the same opinions, passions, and interests. This was impossible. Woven into the fabric of all societies, deeply planted in the very nature of man, were conflicting ideas, interests, and passions. The greatest source of factions has always been the various and unequal distribution of property, Madison said. And then he goes on to talk about wealth and class distinctions.
Right.
Don, what happened to you, Don? Is this above your head?
Oh, no. James Madison. It is, because it's the white man's laws against the white man's constitution and the white man's interpretation and the white man's enforcement. And it's all Greek to a lot of us.
Well, they do. Madison does point out that those who hold property and those who are creditors versus debtors have an advantage. So in the Federalist 10, it does talk about wealthy advantage.
Well, he also looks at he talks about women's rights, being equal rights. He was one of the proponents of having an ERA way back in 1787, something like that. So we're talking about these questions have been around forever, and this is what made our country. And our country is right now in a manifestation of metamorphosis. And so what Madison said in general, yes, it can be applicable to a laissez-faire democratic society. But right now, we've got to define what our democracy is. Is it going to be business, or is it going to be more or less labor? And
it's a republic.
I don't think that's the dividing line. He's talking more about ideal interest groups. He says factious leaders might kindle a flame in one state but would be unable to spread a conflagration throughout all states. So he's talking more about idea-generated groups. Now, that might have something to do with business, like tackling the corruption Wells Fargo has recently faced, or something like that.
Right, and that's exactly what I'm talking about, is that people have ascribed far too much on corporations, and corporations are people too. I've said this a million times, and that's the most asinine. That's why I have very little respect for mankind in America right now, as do my friends, my foreign friends. Like I mentioned, when I was in Europe, they were looking at me like I was crazy for electing Donald Trump. So we're, in a place where our respect is gone. Our respect worldwide is gone. So It's just something we have to work on as individuals and make sure that our leaders.
I did want to bring one quick point up, and then I'll let Albert or Ben go, Don. Earlier this week, they said that if we impose sanctions on Russia, that it might affect Europe because Europe gets 70% of their natural gas from Russia. So if we try to blank Russia over, Europe might be affected.
Oh no, it will be. No, this is a friend partnership, saying that we'll start a little war over here and make it look good, but you can keep sucking my dick, Donald Trump, because I like it. So that's what this is all about.
Don't use that type of language on the show if you don't mind.
Oh,
it's a PG.
I haven't used it for a long time, so I just wanted to make sure that.
No, I know, but when I have to post the show, I have to say if it's PG or R-rated.
Oh, that's PG. They're all doing it, so I don't know what the heck is the problem, or else they wouldn't have so easily passed same-sex marriage or anything like that. It's just a natural thing that happens in D.C.
I understand. A lot of times Albert gets shut out on the show. So, Albert, going along the lines of what you were saying about people being arrested if they protest, do you see any other types of stifling when a particular crowd gets a little enraged against the government or a candidate? Like, have you witnessed any other types of patterns of behaviors?
Well, I want to kind of go back on what I was saying. Like when they pay maybe like $1,000 or $5,000 to the bail bond, and it's supposed to be like innocent unless proven guilty, that you still have to sit at jail for overnight, or unless you go to jail on Friday, then you have to wait until you go to court on Monday, and then you'll get released. So you'll be in jail for 3 days, and then after you go to court, then you can pay the bail bond or whatnot. And so, anyways, you'll be stuck in jail for maybe 2 days or whatnot. You pay the bail bond for $5,000 and you get out. And that's the most what can happen to you on a regular basis. And so, if you bring $5,000 to the bail bond, it kind of seems silly because it's supposed to be innocent unless proven guilty. But why are you paying so much money? Just to get out. So it's just ridiculous, that's what I say. And, to the protesters.
You think sometimes, though, people sometimes in those larger protests, they actually have a plan for getting arrested or an expectation?
Yes, some do and some don't. I would say most don't have a plan. I mean, most of them, to really have a plan and really be ready, you'd have to already have saved up some money and had a lawyer already lined up and everything, and and be with the group and whatnot, But when you're talking about, thousands of people protesting, that's just a lot of people to even have a, there's probably not even enough lawyers out there to cover them all, all at the same time, So in most cases, I would say that most of them are not covered, and most of them don't have a plan.
That's true. I think I have heard when I was watching a few documentaries on Antifa, there are professional. They're not so much lobbyists, but they're professional protesters, and if they're well organized and funded, they prepare for those types of fates.
Right.
Ben,
like
do you have a comment?
Kind of like me. We put together protests just rallies and things like that we know something's going to go down in possible civil disobedience, and we have to confirm all the protocols before we go out and actually do it. So it's a normal thing. It happens a lot.
Another thing to consider is, I'm doing research on my Milwaukee 14 project. A lot of times you have to get the permission of a public park or venue or a college before you can demonstrate. And if you don't pass through those hurdles, then you're subject to trouble.
Right.
Yeah, you can try to get permission and be denied. So, it depends. If you have permission, they're going to say, well, what are you trying to do? What are you going to do? Oh, you're going to protest? Oh, no, you're denied. And so it's just, that's why most protesters go out there without the permission.
Yeah, I want to bring up another point and then I'll let Ben go. Madison's definition of a faction or political party is interesting and significant in the fact that Madison he became one of the Federalists who believed in a one-party system and became Jefferson's most active, I don't know what you want to call it, but Jefferson created the Democratic Party and was a strong anti-federalist. So back then they were trying to define the terms of government and if it should be more of a state-focused government versus a federal, because they didn't want a strong central government because they thought it would have too much power. Well, now, 200 and some years later, we still have, almost 250 years later, we still have a major two-party system that leaves a lot of people in the cracks, away from the wayside, and almost ineffective. And this would be a good segue for you, Ben, to bring up the Debbie Wasserman Schultz thing, because it shows internal problems within the party that they're using different sources of to exploit themselves, in a sense, to make them look like they were the victim. Go ahead, Ben.
Yeah. Well, I don't know why.
Don and Albert may not know about this topic thoroughly.
I know a little bit about it.
Yeah, well, he sent a video with more information, so I'd like you to describe it, Ben.
So I'm sure people have heard about Seth Rich, and I think less people know about who Sean Lucas was. He had served the DNC with papers, along with 120 other people that were on signatures on there, and he died mysteriously after that. And Debbie Wasserman Schultz was one of the names on, I think it was basically served to her and the DNC for rigging it against Bernie. So Sean Lucas dies, Seth Rich dies, the federal prosecutor dies, and these Awan people were one of them tried to leave the country with over $12,000 in cash, which is illegal because you're supposed to declare anything over $10,000. So this is getting weird. While this Russia stuff is going on, going nowhere, it's just distracting from what really happened and what's still going on.
Well, I did know that Seth Rich died. I didn't know those other two people died.
Oh, those are just two more. I think there was a few more people, but I didn't gather all the names. But there was
Well, can you bring up the Pakistani link, please?
I'm not on my computer. I'm just on my phone here.
When I was watching the video, apparently there was Debbie or some faction of the Democratic Party paid this small computer hacking group in Pakistan. They had all their passwords. And I don't know if they claimed that it was a Russian hack, but apparently the Democrats were in collusion with some Pakistani hacking group who were able to obtain oodles of information, including important congressional information that was confidential.
It wasn't in Pakistan. They were Pakistani with ties to the Pakistani government, but they weren't just a hacking
either way,
group.
When they claim that the DNC got hacked on a wide level and all those emails were released, like John Podesta and all that, apparently maybe the I don't know if the Democrats self-sabotaged themselves or there was some type of phony infiltration, but you probably know more about the basics than I do. I could only gather a little from that document because they were hyping it up so much. That video.
Well, the police took a bunch of equipment and there's actually a video of Debbie Wasserman Schultz threatening the chief of police to give her back the equipment. I think she didn't say me. She said a member, which is, I guess, a member of Congress or whatever. That's the word she used. But she really wanted this laptop back, and she actually threatened she said there will be consequences. And now I think the roles have reversed. I think she's kind of in the spotlight right now. So
yeah, I
wouldn't be surprised if she
did
just
this
disappeared
happen
too.
Did it happen between July and November of last year or recently?
Let's see. Well, all this has been going ever since it was found out what happened to Bernie, and she was fired for that. But
right, it was last November.
Don was in Las Vegas when I believe it was the head of the Democratic Party in Nevada was trying to purge the Bernie people. Don, why don't you talk a little bit about that?
Well, it was just the party system is broken. I'm Sergeant of Arms for Washoe County, and also I don't even know what I call it, Assistant Sergeant of Arms for the state. So I've done,
for the Democratic Party,
right.
There was a major controversy in Nevada where the lady was not allowing the Bernie people to put their what do you call it, where you do your pledge, like state how many people were pledging for Bernie. Like she was trying to block them from doing it. Don, you can't have that bad of a memory. Somebody's got to.
You just said something that was all wrong, and I'm just listening to you.
Well, I'm trying to go by memory what you said, and I watched a video of it. She got a lot of shit for it. Well,
first of all, one of the problems was that Roberta Lang, our state chairperson at the time, she introduced the state conference first thing right out the box, saying that she was a Hillary supporter, go Hillary. And that was wrong. You don't, as a state chair at a convention with both parties, with all the primary caucus candidates, and it votes in play. And you don't come out and just say that, shout it out proudly. And then a lot of the speakers were Hillary speakers. So Bernie was effectively shut out of a lot of the pre-voting caucuses, if you will. But there was a lot that was involved. I had to pretty much hold back hordes of, hold back hordes of people, Bernie supporters, who really were heckling the Hillary speakers.
Well, they also, when they did the roll call, the Bernie people were shut out, and some stomped off because they felt like they weren't being heard.
That was a part of it, and we're looking at the fact that the Bernie supporters were rabid. They were rabid. If that's a word, that would be for a human being that was acting above comport.
You know what rabid means, Don?
Yeah. Right. So for the most part, they were acting rabid. I was sitting there looking at them in the eye so that they wouldn't make a break on Barbara Boxer or there was another lady running for it, because we also had business that we had to take care of in terms of electing our state officials again. Also, a platform. I'm a member of the platform committee too, and so we are looking at all of these things. And we didn't even finish our business after 14 hours. I personally left before we even started. That our nominees weren't able to be even introduced to everyone. So we were pretty much a cluster. And it's so sad.
A cluster, yeah. I found the article. It says Nevada delegate allocation process is complex. But Sanders supporters have accused the state Democratic Party of various crimes, including ignoring attempts to change the rules, rigging the process in favor of Clinton, and disqualifying several dozen delegates that supported Sanders. Also, just for a note, you guys, Hillary won 20 delegates and Sanders had 15 pledged. So it was pretty much neck and neck all the way up to the convention.
Right.
There was a horrendous breakdown where the leadership there in Nevada hijacked the process on the floor, creating a tremendous amount of angst among people who were there attending the convention who were supporters of Sanders by ignoring the regular procedure and ramming through what they wanted to do. Blah, blah, blah.
Well,
I have a question, though.
Well,
how come Obama didn't say a word about any of this?
About what?
Well, technically he should have, because
Obama was a Hillary supporter, actually.
Exactly.
Right.
And he knew the corruption. He was part of the corruption.
Yeah, Obama was picking super delegates to support Hillary. So he was doing some of the fighting for her.
And then he just slithered away. After the presidency, he just disappeared, except he didn't because he lives right down the street from the White House or wherever. I don't know. He's still there. But
and this kind of falls into our category of factions, because listen to this paragraph. Out of the 23 of the 43 state delegates, they were locked in only 23 of the 43 were locked in as pledged candidates. Another group of 8 were called super delegates who weren't bound to any candidate and independently didn't decide who to support till the end. That left 12 delegates technically up for grabs at the state convention in May. That number is made up of 5 pledge party leader and elected official delegates and 7 at-large delegates awarded proportionally. So whichever campaign has the majority of the state convention wins the odd-numbered delegate for those 2 groups. So all I'm trying to say is that here's a political party system that had only 23 of their 43 delegates were pledged, and there was infighting, there was factions within factions, and there was nobody to protect the rules and convention of the party process system.
Well, to go back,
that was after 7 o'clock.
And
after
to go back
at night.
And to go back on what we were just talking about, Debbie Watson, not just a big supporter of Hillary Clinton, she was huge. Hillary Clinton came in and she'll go on, talk with Hillary Clinton and shake hands and just, take pictures with her. There's plenty of pictures and videos of her hanging out with Hillary Clinton right there. Bernie Sanders come in and won't even get nothing but a handshake and that's it, It's already, you can already feel how Debbie Watson, treated the others compared to Hillary.
It was Debbie Wasserman Schultz, not Watson.
I know.
Point, Albert,
models, but she was basically the head. She was pulling the strings in the Democrat Party. Right.
Well, this was the tip of the iceberg that showed no one thought Sanders would go that far in the beginning, and then he gained momentum, and then once he had the political collateral to go all the way, nobody knew what to do with him, and the Hillary supporters didn't know how to handle it.
No,
so it turned into
they
got scared, so they got more bulldogish and protected their political consistency of supporting a Clinton because they were afraid.
Well, yeah,
right,
even during debates, they have to mute part of the crowd that was supporting Bernie. There was too much yelling, and they started muting and lowering the volume in the backstage, so you can hear that. All the mics were focused just on the debate because there was too many, Bernie supporters screaming out for Bernie, so they had to mute the crowd on most cases.
Yeah, even at the national convention, that was true the last night. Right before Hillary spoke, there were Bernie people shouting out. I don't know if you voted Republican, Ben, but there was also a problem in the Republican Party, too, because in every debate, Trump never stuck to the issues. He constantly insulted people, like calling Mark Rubio Little Marco, insulting the Bushes, taking pot shots at the...
Well,
I don't know if he voted for Trump, but he took pot shots at the moderators. He insulted people, and CNN, who hosted a lot of the debates, just let him talk. I think NPR had one debate. But the fact of the matter is that dude, he should have been kicked off the fucking stage.
Are you saying
during one of the debates, because Marco Rubio is supposed during the Republican debates, Marco Rubio is supposed to be the poorest of them all, you know what I mean, with the less money and the less funds, and you know what I mean, and the youngest person there with the, you know, with supposed to be kind of a smart guy or something like that, but you know, he has more connections than you think because he's, you know, many people say that he's got the CIA connections because he even knew during the debates he kind of slipped up and said that during the Russians were going to go down there and support Assad, you know, over there and you know, prop up. He did kind of exactly what he said. I don't quite remember. He said they're going to prop up Assad and support him, you know, over there, you know. And then, like a week ago, that's exactly what happened.
See, Marco Rubio is I don't know if he was a senior or junior senator down there, but he's not that wealthy. But he quit his Senate job to run for president, and then when it was discovered that he wasn't going to be nominated, he went back and ran for Senate. I wouldn't call him tremendously wealthy, but he's well known nationwide for. He started fighting vehemently for Florida state, you know, for the state when he was just a local state legislature. So he made a name for himself, but I don't think he's super wealthy.
Yeah, but
I can't believe
that connections because he knew it was going to happen before it happened. So it almost like he heard it directly from the CIA or something. Like he's got connections to the CIA because he knew exactly that it was going to happen before it happened. So that's what a lot of people
You mean the Bashar al-Assad problem, or what?
Well, he knew that the Russians were going to go down there and drop bombs and prop up Assad. You know, he knew that was going to happen before that happened. He literally talked about it and then it happened. Like he literally predicted the future, and it was kind of
the Russians had been supplying Syria arms for over 10 years, so maybe there was a specific incident he luckily predicted, but Russia has had a geopolitical influence in that region for years on end, including northern Iraq and other places around there. What were you going to say, Ben?
I was going to rewind back to you. You mentioned problems with the Republican Party in the primaries. That has nothing. That pales in comparison to people dying mysteriously all within weeks, going on in the deepest part of the Democrat Party.
The notion of a majority political party and the brokenness of both political parties are evident when you have a loudmouth businessman hijack the debate.
Yeah, what Jane is saying is that the Clintons are killers. They're known to, you know, this is not the first time. That's not what that's what you just said.
I'm a Clinton supporter.
That doesn't mean that you can't support killers. But the bottom line is that these guys are not the first dead people in Clinton's past.
Well, what you don't know about the Clintons won't kill you. Did you guys hear that?
Michael Moores joked about Hillary being a trained assassin and killing people during one of his shows. Yeah.
Everybody knows.
Then why did he make
James.
that whole documentary in Ohio, Clinton, Ohio, about how great she was?
Because Trump.
Not exactly. I saw that show too. I mean, that show it's kind of like a show or a documentary or whatever. It was basically stand-up comedy, kind of, and he did support Hillary. Then he also mentioned some bad things about Hillary, You know what I mean? And it was all kind of like bad things about Hillary, but also supporting her at the same time. But
okay, Ben, I don't know. I know about Seth Rich, and it disturbs me. I don't know about Sean, whatever his name is, or the federal investigator,
Lucas.
but it is disturbing. And if people feel like they have to,
they also
if
found
they feel like they have to kill the retained power in Washington, then they're not worth anything, because they don't stand for moral values.
Let me say his name for the record. His name was, he was a prosecutor. His name was Barrington J. Wisenant Jr. He was a black guy, a prosecutor, and he was found on the beach with head trauma, still wearing his dress shirt. So isn't that strange that these people died around Debbie Wasserman Schultz and Hillary Clinton and Podesta, but Obama wasn't worried about it. He was worried about this wild Trump guy.
You underestimate politics so much. You guys so sad.
Do I?
Well, you're not the one paying $40 to run this show, so tell me what we're underestimating.
You're underestimating the fact that we're at war. All these people are declaring war on the populace. That's why we've got Ferguson. That's why Dred Scott, and it's not a coincidence that we have to have vigilant agencies and organizations looking over the government, because they would just take over and be complete dictatorships, and that's because that's a natural direction that governments take.
Then I have a simple question. I got a question then. How come there's so many people in the U.S. that think Obama never had any scandals?
Obama was a scandal from the very start. His blackness.
We actually did a show on it, Ben, 4 weeks ago. How do certain politicians avoid scandal and scrutiny? That's the title of the show.
That's the mainstream media. That's why people think that.
And that's why I get that, because people don't take the time to research. They have to take some time to go out and actually research who they're voting for, what the platform is, what parties they want to ascribe themselves to, and just go ahead and do the due diligence to be a human being and a citizen of America. You're not a citizen if you don't vote, and you're just above that if you do vote and don't know what you're voting for.
Oh, did you just say that? Did you just say you're not a citizen if you don't vote? That sounds alt-right of you.
No. I said, okay, yeah, I said that. So what? Big deal.
Okay, you know what? I'd rather have someone who's not educated not vote than I'd rather have just the educated people vote. But if you're listening to the wrong media source, then you might be...
I heard
might be missing... I don't want some just Joe Blow who's just scared. I talked to a lady when I was a canvasser for Al Frank, and she was scared that Obama would win just because he's black. She said, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? I don't want some doohickey like that voting.
Did you research Hillary Clinton?
That's the whole point. We need those kind of people.
Apparently I didn't research Hillary Clinton because it's the ghost that got away. I was a major Clinton supporter my whole life. I even stuck it out for her this election and brought 2 disabled clients to the polls to vote for her, and she freaking lost to the most brash human being that I've ever witnessed.
That's because the Clintons are terrible people.
You just brought up something that's
Bill
huge.
Clinton's a wonderful person.
Okay, he hasn't raped you yet.
Listen, I don't think the majority of people that vote are dumb or anything like that. I just know that all the electronic voting machines owned by Diebold and ESNN, basically all of them owned by them, are all rigged. It's rigged. The damn machines are rigged. Everything's freaking rigged. So,
He's talking about Diebold, how they cheated on certain elections. Not so much the presidential one, but on state and local government.
One of their machines. One of the guys, like
They caught one of the machines counting backwards, and they're not supposed to count backwards. You're not supposed to get negative votes. That they actually the machine.
Albert, we do have a guest on the line. Albert, do you remember what documentary that was? Because you're the one who referred it to me. Where one county
the documentary movie was actually called. I'm trying to remember what it's called. It's called what is it called?
It's about two people who go to Diebold headquarters, and they also found a letter from George W. Bush. Somebody from a state wrote him, and he said, "We have this state covered for you." And they had all this information where they went around and they tracked Diebold and how they ran their voting machines. And this one lady in Louisiana lost a local race because all her votes, they misrepresented her in the voting system. They put a guy's name where her name was supposed to be, so every time someone punched her name, a guy's name came up. But I'll try to look up the documentary while we have a guest on the line from the 845.
Something American. I don't remember.
Yeah, I'll look it up.
Yeah.
There's someone on hold from the 845, so let's see if they want to just listen or talk. Good evening. This is Jane from Political Gravity. Who do I have the pleasure of speaking to?
You've got Mike coming to you from Westchester County. I'm sure you've heard of that.
Is that in New York?
Yes, I'm in New York. I'm just about 15 minutes north of Chappaqua.
Cool. I have a friend in Albany.
Did you ever notice that people in different parts of the country they look at events in a different light? In other words, if I took somebody from Alaska and said, okay, I want you to evaluate 9/11, what happened? They're going to have a whole different perspective than somebody that was in Manhattan that witnessed it firsthand. You follow what I'm saying?
Definitely, I see that happening.
Now, I'll tell you what. Since I'm here close to Ground Zero, Clintonville, we have a whole different perspective of Hillary and the rest of the Clinton animals that are down there. I have a lot of friends in the NYPD. I have a lot of friends in the military, people that have worked security details with the Clintons. The stories that I've heard firsthand on how this woman is never made it in the media. I had a command sergeant major tell me, a military that worked a security detail at one of the airports, that she was protected. If the American people really knew what type of woman this was, she wouldn't have had the support that she did. But the machine really did a great job pushing her. But all of us here close that really know them for what they are, I'm thrilled that she didn't get in. Now, as far as Trump, I've noticed a change in attitudes in society, and you can see it everywhere from Antifa and everything else. This group, and I'll tell you, I'm 60 years old, so I'm not a 20-year-old. But this group today, anything that has the ability to say no to them, anything that wants to stop them, any symbol of or person that represents authority, whether it's police, a judge, the courts, law, regulations, you name it, they're against it. They don't want to hear it. They want to do what they want. And people have said that it's a selfish society. I really think so. Now, you have someone like Trump that comes in with a baseball bat in his hand. I've got another good friend of mine who works down in Washington. I can't tell you where. And he told me, I called him up and I said, how's he doing? Meaning Trump. And he said, he's making enemies on both sides of the aisle. He said, but I'll tell you what, the enemies he's making are not friends of the American taxpayer. This man is rattling foundations, people that have made millions at the cost of the taxpayer, that have had their own little scams going, their own little deals through Congress and everything else. And along comes Trump, and they can't buy him. And he's rude,
like
and he's brash, and they can't control him. They can't control him, and it's really pissing them off. So the only thing they can do is try to discredit him the best they can, to try to impede him, stop him any way they can from even small things, to try to ruin his reputation and everything else, and get the public opinion out there, which they lead us by the nose anyway. And the media, I don't.
Well, I would like to. Can I jump in a minute?
Sure.
I'm 56. I'm the host of the show. I have 4 co-hosts, and their ages range from around 28 to my age. First of all,
44.
My only major beef against Donald Trump is his speaking style and the way he insults people and his emotional reactionary. I understand his pureness and passion within that sense of him trying to fix things, but I don't like his approach as far as how he treats people and how he belittles people. Now, as far as the Clinton camp, I did have a rose-colored perspective of the Clintons. I even remember certain CNN segments where they interviewed some New York voters who had been around since Hillary ran for Senate, and they were saying that Hillary knew him on a first-name basis, and they had all these rosy-colored stories. So I don't know Hillary up close. I know that she has dirt behind her, and I understand how Trump's rattling the cage of Washington. He's an outsider. But I'll let somebody else go now. I just wanted to throw that in there.
Here's the thing on Donald Trump, okay? Because, I mean, you say he can't be bought. He doesn't have to be bought. He's doing him a favor. Because he said during the election, one of his speeches, he said that we shouldn't be giving money to Saudi Arabia because, and now he's the president and he's sending money and missiles and what have you not to Saudi Arabia.
Not money, missiles, arms, and also letting them buy it. And some of the stuff, older stuff that our military.
Well, how about the China stuff where he has investments with his son?
Guns and butter.
Well, those investments, they didn't happen yesterday. He didn't become a billionaire yesterday. There were investments that were on the table and everything else that those were on running. When you're at that level and that amount of money, there is international investments that you're making that some of them take 1 or 2 years to develop, that you have to deal with government, especially in China, government agencies to get an okay for a purchase of a hotel, buying the property, setting up the business, getting the right to use the name. But the American public, it's like the media feeds them stuff, and everybody just sits there nodding, they're pointing their little heads going, you're right, oh my God, Trump's worth too much money. Oh, this is terrible. They don't look at a larger picture. People look at the world through a straw instead of sitting back and saying, oh my God, there's a larger picture here. Yes, there is. It's a larger picture. And they're misled. Like, I'll tell you guys, I'm a World War II historian. I've collected war souvenirs since I was 7. I got my first German helmet, and then Japanese, British, American. I've got 3 propaganda radios in my collection, Nazi propaganda radios. And they're originals with the eagle and swastika embossed in the Bakelite in the face of them. And what they did was Hitler, when he first got into power, you can look it up. I forget how you spell it. A Volkampfspange. Look up People's Radio. You can take a look at one of these. Now, what they did was the Nazis wanted people to get the BS directly from them. But they realized that people didn't have a lot of money. Not everybody back then, after World War I, had extra money that they could buy a radio. It was a luxury. So the government subsidized and had loans where they'd finance it for you. And they went to the major companies like Telefunken, Siemens, and they said, look, we want you to design a regenerative set that was, we're going to call it the People's Radio. And we're going to subsidize the production of this, which puts more people to work so that everybody can afford a radio. But when you bought it, you still had to go to the government, to the post office, and register the fact that you even had a table radio. Now, getting the radio, getting the word out, controlling the media.
Was this in Germany?
Yes, in Nazi German. So now, getting the word out through it. So I look at it's a whole different thing. When I look at parallels through history and how it's done, and it's just frustrating as hell to know the history and be able to. I've got a foundation in it, solid foundation.
And
to draw
if I
the
could
parallels.
jump in.
Yeah,
it was.
What's your first name? So Ben wants to say something.
I'm Mike. My name is Mike.
Oh yeah, okay. Mike. Ben would like to comment. By the way, three of our hosts watch. Three of the hosts do not watch mainstream news. Just for the record, go ahead, Ben.
Hi. So what you were saying about the propaganda in Germany. If I could point out that Obama was the one that re-legalized propaganda.
Yes,
and it kind of went under the radar.
Yes, yeah, I'd agree with
that.
Well,
Ronald Reagan was the one who ended the Fairness and Doctrine clause for the radio, where there has to be equal amounts of conservative and liberal views.
Maybe.
Well, I don't remember I think it was an executive order. I wouldn't know which one, but I'm pretty sure Obama reintroduced propaganda, and it's being used right now. I just saw a Trump Tower News segment, and I didn't even know there was such a thing. He just said hell with the whole thing.
Yes, it's on his Facebook page. He has
right.
his own
I
news.
didn't know there was one.
Yeah.
Well, in fairness to Obama, it was Ronald Reagan who disbanded the 1949 FCC Fairness Doctrine Clause, which stated every radio station, and John Kennedy also promoted the Fairness Doctrine, that every radio station has to have an equal amount of opposing views. For example, you couldn't have Sean Hannity on 12 hours a day. You would have to have, like, Al Franken 6 hours and Sean Hannity 6 hours. So the fact of the matter is that happened in the 80s.
Yeah, well, capitalism kills it because if you don't have the listeners and the viewers to be able to sell the advertising, and they're going to look at it and say who sells more advertising, brings more money in for the radio station or whatever. Oh, Kennedy does, because we've got a liberal program over here and we got 10 listeners. It's not bringing in the money, so don't schedule them. It seems like most of the conservative talk show radio, television, or whatever brings in more money because there are more people paying attention to it. That's what they're going to follow. And they've repeatedly
but you have to realize it's kind of like a conglomerate. I had a friend, I'm from Los Angeles, and I have people in high places too. I knew a top executive from Clear Channel Network. They're only putting money behind top conservative hosts. There was a liberal station out of Florida a few years ago with Stephanie somebody, and it only went on for a few years, but they didn't have the backers.
Well, here's the thing, because, I mean, Comcast and Time Warner Cable, I mean, they own a lot of the mainstream media. I mean, not most of it. Like, let's just say, like, CNN, ABC, and whatnot. But here, Donald Trump has only called CNN fake news, and he hasn't called the other mainstream media fake news. So why is Donald Trump only calling CNN fake news?
Versus Fox.
All of them. I don't think it's just CNN. I think the attitude is all of them.
Here's the reason why. I'll tell you why. Because CNN made one report on Donald Trump, then he took the showers, he takes gold showers and something like that, and he got that was really disrespectful to him, and that's when he called them fake news.
I think it's all of them, and I myself I'd agree with it. I don't trust any of the mainstream media. And I know this from, I'll tell you what, I'm a government contractor. I feed military, and the first group that came back from Iraq, behind the DFAC, I'm behind the mess hall. You guys don't know what a DFAC is, and dining facility, that's what they call it. And anyways, I'm behind there talking to the guys, and we're having a cigarette, and I said, what was the hardest thing for you to come home? What was the hardest thing? He said, the hardest thing was to explain to and justify to our friends and relatives what's going on over there. This is when they first came back.
Thank you very much.
I said, I said, what are you talking about? They said, we pulled into a village, and we saw the media paying the locals to put together a protest, giving them cash, so that 10 or 15 of them would stand behind the newscaster, shaking their fists and screaming while they filmed it. They created the protest just to have it as a backdrop. Now, that's shown back home, and the American people go, oh, they don't want us here. Oh, and we're not allowed to say anything. In the military, they just had to watch it. They said everything is staged, and the American people suck it up like idiots. And we watched it firsthand. I'm sitting back. You got to be kidding.
Then why would anybody in their right mind want to be in the military? That is the wrong thing.
I'll tell you
no
why.
way.
Now, one of the soldiers right there told me that they did a raid on an apartment in Baghdad, and they went in, and he said, as soon as I get into the house, we cleared the house, there was a computer set up, and on the wall was a picture of a nuclear plant that's close to here. This kid says, I live in Westchester County, I know what that is. And he said, I saw the picture pinned on the wall behind the computer. And he said, that's when I got it. That's when I understood. And he said, immediately Army Security ASA came in, took the computer, and started taking files, paperwork, whatever they could, and just took it all. And but the American public doesn't see all this. Maybe the media, maybe the military should expose a lot of the stuff instead of keeping their mouths shut about it, so the American people and the outspoken ones that are out the crybabies really realize that, oh my God, this is not a utopian world out there, and there are people out to do harm to us. Maybe they should release a lot of this
well,
information.
apparently the American people are sheep because they all show up at the Trump rally like a bunch of hostage, emotionally hostage victims.
It's anger. I agree with them.
They can't see the writing on the wall.
Yep, because you know what it is? It's anger. We're fed up. We've had too many Bernies and Hillarys and Al Frankens.
There's
and all
nothing
the
wrong with
that have
Bernie.
made millions.
He knows policy.
All of them.
He knows effective implementation in healthcare. Bernie Sanders.
And they do Venezuelan too.
Sanders has earned his own right in politics. You have no reason to criticize him.
Yeah, Venezuela. Look at the same policies.
And even if Jimmy Carter's far-fetched, he has a sense of justice about him too.
Right. He was another strong-willed, excellent politician that stood up for America in the face of international terrorism and everything, wasn't he? He was another strong-willed, good backbone to lead this country.
You know, just because he had one mishap in Iran where that he could not rescue the hostages doesn't make him a failure. He stood up to Argentina when they were killing tens of thousands of their students in 1976.
No, I wanted to say
Jimmy
something
Carter was
too.
One of our best presidents.
Go ahead, Ben. Go ahead, Ben.
He was one of our best presidents, Jimmy Carter.
I think Bernie was a very likable guy. I think his policies were dangerous because we don't have the money to be throwing at everything, and we don't have the people all standing in line to be told what to do. This is an individual country. I mean, it's for the individual. That's why it's a republic and not just a democracy, is because there are individual rights and you can't be forced to do something for somebody else. And I think a lot of Bernie's policies would force everybody to lift everybody else up. And that's not what capitalism is about.
I do agree with you, Ben. The fact of the matter is, though, is even Obama did not research effectively his own ACA plan. If they were going to implement something on a vast scale that large, they should have made it a single-payer system and not put the burden on employers. The only thing I was saying about Bernie is that Bernie's been in the public policy sector for a long time, and he understands the nuts and bolts, whereas Trump's trying to pass legislation and doesn't even get it.
I'm not going to let Obama go on.
You guys,
I'll tell you what. As a business
owner, the people who were forced to slave in slavery. So that whole thing is fallacious.
That's so 200 years ago, though.
When it was illegal to give your segment an education, you get thrown in jail, and that was up to 60 years ago. That means that there's been a 340-year lag in education.
Okay, that was 60 years ago. That was an entire lifetime ago.
And so things like affirmative action should not be taken away. Affirmative action, the Voting Rights Act, anything like that has been garnered should not be taken away.
Ben, the voting rights have been tampered with. There was a federal law that was reversed a couple of years ago by the Federal Circuit Courts that stripped people of more voting rights acts. Did you know about that?
I think you should have to show your ID. There should be no excuse where you can vote anonymously. It's not Twitter. It's voting.
I agree.
All I'm saying is that there's forces going through each side. There's not automatic protection everywhere. And Ben, believe it or not, people are still being discriminated against.
The machines are
okay, I'm going to lay off the line a while. You guys can talk. I'm going to look up the Voting Rights Act.
I'm a committeeman with the Republicans over here, and I was a poll watcher. I went to pick up the final tally on the votes in the last election. It was the last election. And my wife and I had voted for this gentleman for Supreme Court who was running at that ward where I was picking up the final numbers from that machine. All right, 9 o'clock, so I show up and get it, and they read off his name, and they said, not one vote. And I said, this is wrong. I know for a fact my wife and I voted for him. So check it again. Checked it again, said 0 votes. And I had them seal that machine. So I've seen it firsthand.
I
I've
remember.
seen, it was one of those electronic machines where you feed in the paper and it reads it.
Yeah,
and that made me nervous because when they also has a phone line hooked up to it, like what's going on with this? It's impossible. You can't tell me there were no votes for him.
You ought to watch a documentary movie called Hacking America.
It's called Hacking Democracy, Albert. I looked it up.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Hacking Democracy. That's the documentary.
I mean, when everybody talks about they're angry about Trump and everything, the anger that's out here, I think, is really freaked out a lot of the people that aren't used to it, and they don't understand. A lot of them don't own businesses. They haven't dealt with the federal government in the way that many of us have, like as a business owner myself. And when people say, we need a larger government, the government, the old joke, I'm here from the government, I'm here to help. And they don't get it. And right now, Trump is he's a hero to many of us out here. He's decimating these ministries that have been set up that make their own rules with no oversight and spending money like crazy. And he's doing a great job of it. Great job. Because that is killing industry. It's killing jobs. It's affecting, and China's getting away with whatever they want. They've got none of these restrictions on them. We've shackled our economy and ourselves with all the utopian feel-good stuff. We've had enough. And people are upset by it. And it's freaking people out there sitting back going, what did we do? Oh, how did we lose this? Oh, how did we? And you know what? It's going to get worse. The anger is going to get worse out there. And as far as the liberal attitudes, you can hear it in my voice. I've had it with it. I've gone passing out, and I was never like this, gone passing out, say, leaflets, flyers for a Republican that was running for office. I've had people spit on me. Liberals spit on me and start swearing, and there was no need for that. There's no need for that whatsoever. But they do it. They've become obsessed, and this spoiled brat attitude has really come out with a lot of them, where it's violent. We've seen it with Antifa.
And intimidate you. It's to intimidate you so you won't go out there and speak your mind.
That's it. That's it. And I'll tell you, I lived 11 years in Los Angeles, San Fernando Valley. I was awake when the Northridge quake hit. I mean, I saw it firsthand. I was up near the Roxford exit, Granada Hills. So you're from L.A., you know where that was. And I've gotten a good taste of the liberals firsthand. The anti-gun attitude, I'm a gun collector, man. I've collected firearms for years. And I've seen liberals flip-flop, too. I have no respect for a lot of the utopian views from I wish I could send them over to Iraq and give them a reality. I'm going to do a reality check and see what the world is really like out there and come home and say, oh, my God, it's not the way I imagined. I had my next-door neighbor tell me in California that I was a gun owner. I was part of the plague on American society. And then the Northridge quake hit, and we had gang members looting while people were home. And I had the phone built into between the seats of my car. Back then, that's how I had a Panasonic. And so it took me a while to get through. I guess some of the cell towers were still working. And I got through to Devonshire Division. And the cop said there's no way they could get to me. They said, try calling Foothill Division, which is further away, but okay. I tried calling Foothill Division. And the cop said, you're on your own. We can't get anyone up there. He said, if you can't stay away from them and you have no choice, do you understand what I'm saying? Defend yourself. Do you have a way to defend you? I said, yes, I do. And he said, when you're done, call us. Do you understand me? I said, yes, I do. And then my neighbor came knocking at the door, that same neighbor. And he said, do you have a shotgun or something, one of those small rifles? And I said, you mean like a 22? And he said, anything that I can keep at my house. I said, you called me a plague on American society, that I was a conservative and all this stuff. And I said, now look at you asking me you don't know anything about firearms. Firearm safety, nothing. But now you're asking me to give you a gun and ammunition? No, I'm not going to give you anything. And I said, for my own safety and yours. And I said, but look at the change in you. From one day telling me that I'm the plague on society as a gun owner, now you're asking to borrow one. When the nightmare comes knocking at your door and comes to the dining room table, liberals change. Like that old thing about there are no atheists in the foxholes. It's true, and I've seen it firsthand. So
that goes all the way back to the first little kind of miniature debate that me and Don had. It goes back all the way back to how are you going to keep your food designated for your dinner table?
Yep.
There's no force when the 911 isn't working. It's down to what you can do to keep your family alive.
And they weren't.
No,
there was no police.
911 sometimes makes things worse. Actually, you call 911 before you know it, you're arrested.
Yeah. No,
well, let me bring something up. I was going to bring this up a minute ago. What I've noticed, here's something simple I just saw the other day, but I can't help but see something and then think deeper about it. So I like UFC. I like watching UFC fights. I think it's just like the ultimate combat sport. There's no way you can win if you're not better. So I was watching a UFC fight that took place in Japan, and I've seen hundreds of them that were here in the U.S. But in Japan, you can hear a pin drop. You can hear the fighters breathing. They sit there and they watch every movement of the fight without making noise. And wow. That's a totally different culture than we are. We are rowdy. We're disrespectful. There's no order. And in China and Japan, you go to an event that you might think you know about, and it's a totally different event.
I'll tell you why. Let me tell you why. Because our commercials right here on our Western media, especially our commercials, right? Back in the days, the commercials used to be how strong the thing was, how long it lasted. Now you see car commercials with a bunch of shit that doesn't even matter. The car commercial has nothing to do with the car even having air conditioning or having how much horsepower it has or how much nothing.
But that's the difference between what Hitler did. That's the difference with what Hitler, what the Germans did in mass marketing and distributing the radios, and the democratic, laissez-faire, free market.
Let me finish.
TV came into the United States. The United States was commercialized, and they were government owned and controlled.
Well, the commercials.
I wasn't done following that up.
The United States are basically, to open your subconscious mind on wanting something, but not because it's good or not because it's good for you or it'll last long or nothing like that. It's just trying to open your unconscious mind and wanting it just because you want it. And here's the thing, because the way the commercials are to brand recognition, recognize this brand, and they crush all the little companies and only recognize this brand. And so when you go out there to shop, let's just say at Walmart, you say, and you want to get a chocolate, you say the only brands I recognize is Snickers, Kit Kats, and the Twix. I can't recognize any chocolate brands, and it's all around brand recognition. And all those little companies are getting crushed. And it's always like that. It's always the guy with the bigger money always crushing the other people.
Except I was taking it farther. My example of a UFC fight in the U.S., the difference between that and a UFC fight or K1 or whatever in Japan is the difference is the crowd is in lockstep. They're uniform. They're orderly. They're respectful, and honor is number one.
Right.
That's easy to do when an entire populace has a like-minded way of living. Here in the U.S., every bit of order has been attacked. This order offends me. That order offends me. So we basically have no order. No every level of the structure has been attacked because of people's feelings, and I think that's why Trump won, is because a lot of people feel like we don't have time for that crap. People's feelings have been destroying order.
It's disorderly here in America because it's very corrupted here in America, and a lot of people are just pissed off and upset.
It's not orderly. It's chaos. If you look at all the groups combined, you can't combine all the groups. All the groups seem to magnetize to each other, and we have a whole bunch of small groups, and they only align politically.
Yeah,
not
when you
think of it as Ben, it's not chaos, Ben. It's the natural order of things.
When
right,
you know
but the difference
for decades and centuries, and it's always been corrupted, and it's you're going to be pissed off, and it's going to be disorderly. It's going to be disorderly. Like, everybody's always pissed off.
Okay, to tie up the loose ends here is what I'm saying is there's a dominance hierarchy. That's what white man's whatever. White men are good at designing systems, but the systems that we live under actually give us rights.
Designing corrupted systems.
So what I'm saying is there's a dominance hierarchy, and it's broken here because there's dominance hierarchies for every single culture here. In Japan, they all fall under one dominance hierarchy. That's my point.
This is America, Ben. America was built on differences.
I know.
We're a different. This is a new experiment, new social experiment. And that's why war needs to be taken out of the equation, because there should be some modicum of desire to attain peace or at least inclusion in our society. War.
That's socialist communism.
It's not socialist communism. It's just loving.
You're expecting everybody that aligns with you to fall in line, and that doesn't work here. There's always going to be war. There's always going to be disagreement. Always.
You can't legislate human behavior. You're never going to legislate human behavior.
Never going to legislate what, Mike?
Human behavior. I mean, wouldn't it be nice stuff? That's going to end up. You're going to end up in a cemetery. Well, the world is such a wonderful place. We've got to all get along. You're going to be dead.
Oh yeah. Well,
that's why we moved out.
The powerful and the wealthy love capitalism. Capitalism means if you have enough money, you can buy whatever you want it to be. So if you want black people to go to jail, then you can have that if you can afford it.
But Mike, the very first thing you said when you came on air was that we have a schism in the parts of the country, and that is true.
Yes.
That's why people moved west. They moved west for freedom. I live in Reno, Nevada. I can walk past the residence line and keep on walking, and I don't have to stop and worry about anybody's fence, any idiot white man with a gun saying this is my property. Nothing like that. I don't have to deal with that. I can keep on walking until I get tired. And so that's freedom. That's freedom. We don't have to worry out here west.
Freedom. Hold on. Look, don't get me started on freedom in Nevada, because you've got an entire movement of ranchers and people that supported them that have zero freedom, and they never had a bail, and they've got a judge that's in the pocket of Harry Reid.
Yeah,
but that's Nevada, and if you look.
Yeah, but Ben, what he's trying to say is that Don is actively involved in politics, but the average person can earn money, feed their bellies, and have a roof over their head and sustain themselves without ever being involved in politics. They have the freedom to be who they want to be. Most of the
now
time.
more people are getting involved.
Because more people are
coming. More people are coming to Nevada. That's what's happening. People are coming here from everywhere. That's why Tesla's coming. That's why, Tesla's here. That's why Apple's building a second campus. Google just bought 1,200 more acres. We're ready to explode out here.
It's desert land. You can buy an acre for $1,000 out there, and it's rich in minerals. Why do you think the ranchers are getting hassled around?
No, it's not $1,000 anymore, Ben.
Well, Vegas was the fastest growing city 10 years ago.
You can't even rent an acre for $1,000. See, look at business peers. You're paying just like $1 per square feet just to rent the shop out here, right here in the desert.
20 years ago, maybe, Ben, but not anymore.
Okay, check out the difference. If you guys are questioning my ability to understand property value, check out the difference between Nevada property and Washington state property, particularly anywhere around Seattle.
No one's
I guarantee
challenging
you. It'll be double.
Some of the highest prices in the world, somewhere around Seattle.
If I can actually
Exactly.
find $1,000 per acre, I would definitely move there ASAP. I would
Find it.
No.
You can find it. You'll
Even
just be out in the middle
Minnesota
of nowhere.
home values have doubled since 2008. Even in the rural
Right.
areas,
People
What
who
I'm
live in
saying
California
is-
and New York, they've had it. They've had it with a lot of the restrictions that are on us, the taxes that are on us. It's unbelievable. I mean, I've even thought about leaving New York, and I left California to come back east to get them. And man, I'll tell you the
Well, you know what?
policies
But you hit the two biggest tax rates there are.
Well, let me.
Yes.
I left California because of the franchise tax board.
Well,
Yep,
let me
had
tell you
it.
what. There's a lot of fake properties and a lot of fake, sellers. Because I looked on Craigslist and whatnot and other ads, and you go there and supposedly you buy what you're paying for, and you're paying another guy offshore, and then when the real owner shows up, you're basically hipped out. But it happens a lot more than you think.
a lot of the imposition of these taxes have nothing to do with the presidency. I'm from Minnesota.
Yeah, it does. Here we go. Here we go.
Well, we're
Yes,
in the
you're
top
wrong there.
5 as far as state.
Absolutely.
Minnesota is in the top 5 in the country as far as state taxes.
We had a huge fight here in Westchester County with the federal government coming in and telling us that we need this percentage of homes for people that are minorities and don't have the money, can't afford to have apartments or whatever else. So they came into Westchester and started demanding. And it was a huge fight. What they wanted couldn't be done because of I mean, you have a lot of there. We don't have sewer hookups in every single town, and you're demanding putting an apartment building in some of these towns that are built on bedrock that don't have sewer hookups and everything else, and you're going to have cesspools. Now, creating it, building it, and everything, it wasn't feasible. They proved it to the government. You can't put apartment buildings in this town, in this area. You can't have it. You can't, and the government didn't want to hear it. And they sued the county. It was a huge battle, and it was a federal government. Now, we just settled it. We won. Our county, we have a Republican executive. He fought them for years, and he won. It saved us millions of dollars because of Obama policies. Now, a lot of it's been changed. Obama's out, and they dropped it. Thank
It
God.
might have been federal mandated policies about proportional rent in that district. It might not be Obama's name attached to it.
It was under Obama. Everything changed. Obama changed a lot of stuff that you guys don't even know. Have you ever heard of an A76 circular? I know this because a contractor.
How do you know we haven't heard of it? I have a
because you
master's in
haven't heard
political
of it.
science. I've heard of a lot of things.
I know you're typing it quick. Type in. Have you ever heard of an A76? A76 circular.
Be more specific. Can you be more detailed?
No, that's it. That's the name of it. It's called an A76 circular.
Oh, why don't you talk
Just
about
typing as fast as we can. All right. What this is, it was a rule that was put in place by Eisenhower during the Eisenhower years that said the federal government will not compete with the private sector for goods or services. Now, they wanted to rewrite it because it mandated that whenever the federal government does something, they'd have to do a cost study. Is it cheaper for the private sector or the public sector to do the work? Now, the majority of the time, it's for the private sector. I can feed troops cheaper than what the government pays for them to do it themselves. That's a fact. And there's a cap on what I can charge. We're not Halliburton. So the government comes to me and they say, you can only charge $5.50 for breakfast, $8 for lunch, and $10.50 for dinner. That's all you can charge. Now give me a bid. How much do you bid for this contract? So they want to do it cheaper than that. Do you understand how it works? Okay, so anyways, what Obama did was, they were talking about rebuilding it before him. He came in and said, you know what, anti-contractor, anti-KBR, anti-Halliburton, the public is all fed up. This is great. We could create a larger government. Here's an opportunity. Let's go into the Pentagon and everywhere throughout the government where they have IT contractors that are working for IBM and everything else, and let's convert these contractors into federal employees. We can make a larger government. The taxes for the federal unions will go up. This is what a deal. Outstanding. So they started going to the contractor saying, how would you like to come to work Monday and be a federal employee? Well, what's in it for me? Well, you're not going to make as much money as you would as a contractor, but you get benefits, you get health, you get retirement, you get vacation, you get, okay, so they started converting them. Now the big boys, the contract companies, IBM and everyone, went back to the government and said, under the A76, you are poaching our employees, you're competing with the private sector. The lawyers went back to Obama, and they said, they're right. This is a lawsuit. This is a problem. Obama went to Schumer and the rest of them, and they said, okay, we got to do something. The A76 is causing. They suspended all A76 cost studies from the first year Obama was in power until he left. Now, I haven't checked up on it to see if Trump put the A76 back on the table, but they suspended it every single year. I was involved with Nan Hayworth, our congresswoman, and she tried putting the A76 back so that they'd be shackled. They'd have to do a cost study for who, because it benefits the taxpayer. Who was cheapest for us to do the work? And, you know, landscaping, anything.
Yeah.
And it was shut down.
You don't have at that point, you don't have a choice.
Wait. I understand what he's saying, okay? And let me just put it this way. I understand what he's saying. Wait. Let me talk. I understand what he's saying, but I'm just saying when you go off topic, nobody's going to understand what you mean by specific words or whatever you call it. Nobody's going to know when you go off topic. We're going off topic and talking about different things.
Well, I know, but you asked me to go in more for it. I mean, there are things like the A76 program and everything else that people don't understand. They don't understand the big picture of saying that there's more out there. You know, and she was saying about Obama's policies, how there was nothing that, and I said, no, wrong. Obama did a lot of damage that was out there. She's saying, well, you can't blame Obama for it. Yes, I can. There's a small business group.
On topic, you know, and we're all jumping out of topic and talking about completely different things.
Well, that specific thing that you brought up, Mike, was that's like a football team or a basketball team playing a game against the referees that are still being the referees. There's no way to win. When you play against or when you do business with somebody that writes the regulation book, you can never win. It's your name versus the United States of America if you have a problem with it, and you'll never win because the lawsuit can go forever.
That's what I've been talking about with the laws and black people. Black people have not made the laws. We can't comprehend them. That's why we can't play in this game. It's so hard.
Don't give me that, Don. Don't give me that. No.
It's hard.
Nope.
Oh no. That's why we have Trump as a president. That's because the blacks don't want to play the game. That's why
if you're telling me
that's why we have such evil.
If you're telling me that the black community can't comprehend the laws, you can't use that as an argument, because I can give you example after example of black people that can't
do it. That's why there's a movement for Ebonics, for instance, for blacks' own language. That's why so many people are incarcerated. Right. They're incarcerated because they don't understand the law. They don't understand the actual text of the law, man.
I don't get the Ebonics stuff and why they want to separate the black community wants to separate, many in it want to separate themselves from American society. Half of my crew when my restaurant was open was black. Just that's how it happened. And I used to we had the discussion many times with my crew, and I said, look, when you answer the phone, I said, I don't want to hear you on the phone representing my business going, yo, man, you're going to it. I don't want any of that. I said,
that's what I'm talking about.
And you're going to be normal. And I said, and you're going to act normal. Okay. And I said, because there's no place in that in the business world. And I said, a perfect example, if you were diagnosed with cancer and you went into the doctor's office and sat in front of the doctors and the doctor looked at you and said, yo, dog, this be the shit right here. Now, look, I'm going to tell you what's going on, yo. What confidence level would you have in that doctor? Would you trust that doctor with your life?
If he was a qualified doctor, hell yes. You got to understand,
I'm out the door.
Saying as if you were from Russia, and you had and you came to America, and you did very successful surgeons. You come here and
people
you have
judge you by the way you speak. People, whether you want to admit it or not, society judges you by how articulate you are and how you speak. That's how the world is, right or wrong.
Western.
Let me reel it back in.
Italian mob. Okay, this would be the Italian mob talking like, hey, Like, hey, I'm looking for so and so. Who wants to know? Like, this is
right.
And society would judge you as it being ignorant if you spoke like that, and they do. They laugh at the New York, hey, yo, Vinny. They laugh at that. Society judges you by how articulate you are and how you sound, whether you want to admit it or not.
And if there's there's an African dialect that is just like the yo, and you should trust it in times of need or whatever, as much as you should trust any other dialect.
So let me reel this back into, actually this ties exactly into what I was saying, is that if you leave cultures to their own devices, they create their own dominance hierarchy. And you can see this in prisons. You can see it in prisons because there's no order given. There's order created.
By force.
There's outside. Okay, let me rephrase that. There's outside order, which would be the guards and the warden. That's outside order telling you what you must do, and you have to. But there's also inside order that says if you're somebody or if you're nobody.
No, stop. You don't have to, Ben. You really don't have to. Go ahead.
But okay, I was just explaining that there's outside order, which is what you're told to do, what you must do, or you'll be punished. There's inside order that tells you where you rank.
Yeah, and
what happens in jail also happens out here in the real world, because there's outside order what the government says you can do, and there's inside order what your boss tells you what you can do. You know what I mean? And it's totally different.
Then there are cultures that are disorder, and that is the.
We're talking about the exchange of natural rights for civil rights. And we have plenty of freedoms in America. Most of the impositions are not on ourselves.
No freedom. No freedom. There is no freedom.
I have plenty of freedom.
You have no freedom. You're running after money.
Yes, I do.
You're running after the dollar.
I have more money than God right now.
And that's the problem, is that money is not, people are saying money is God. Money is not God. Money means nothing. Money's only paper. It doesn't even have a backing except for a good look.
Well, it provides security when you need to pay your bills. It's enabling me to buy an airline ticket to visit you. Okay, I'm going to get off the line. There's 3 people talking at once. Finish your thoughts. We have 15 minutes left.
I was just going to say I'm getting ready to head out.
Time is money.
Yeah, right, whatever.
And money is time.
Don, did you get what I was saying? And Albert, and Mike, and Jane, do you guys understand what I was saying about outside and inside order? And
I do.
If you leave a culture to its own devices, the order is created. Now, if that's against the country or the Constitution or not, it's still a natural order that's being created, being left to devices. And you can see this at universities happening, where self-segregation is happening, like those days without white people.
I'll answer the question after Don hangs up.
That's any socioeconomic class that within that class there becomes that natural order. In Albert, in jail and school and anywhere else, there's the alpha and there's the beta, and that's just the way it is.
Yeah, in college, you got outside order from the teachers at the high school, and then you got the inside order, which is the other students. They'll beat you up if you don't do this or if you don't say that.
Being a diplomat, you don't even have to. I've never dealt with any of that crap. I've never dealt with that, and when I do, I diffuse it as well as any guns. That's why I don't.
Okay, but Don,
you're talking. First of all, we're talking. I want to clarify something, Don. There's a thing called the system, where there's socially prescribed values that tell you must go to college, you must do this or that to obtain a lifestyle. You do not have to abide by those norms. But people like Jean-Jacques Rousseau, let me talk, Don. It's my show. There's people like Thomas Hobbes and Rousseau who said there's a naturally defined a right of liberty to preserve oneself. And the way you do that is through the social contract where you exchange natural rights for civil rights. You give up some of your freedom for police protection, and you have to have respect for the power of the sovereignty. Now, in order to do that, you have to be a compliant citizen. But if you have the shit beat out of you, or you're shot at like Michael Brown and Ferguson, then all that shit goes out the window.
Right, but
what the hell? What does that mean?
Okay, what I was saying can be simplified. Don, I know for a fact that if you are selected, say there's 10 alpha males selected, and they're just put into a room with each other.
Right.
Just hear me out.
There will be a
no. Exactly.
Just let him finish, Don. Let someone else give an argument.
These arguments are not arguments if they have fallacious platforms. If their basis is fallacious, the arguments suck. And the thing is that these black guys and these Mexican guys are walking around with gold teeth and tattoos everywhere, and the parents walking around, and you are saying that they are trying to be a part of society or some bullshit. That's bullshit. That's complete and utter bullshit. Their half of this country is totally against everything that's going on, and they will just and if they had any guts and any balls, they'd be out here in the streets ready to tear this whole motherfucker down.
I'm actually relaying something. I'm relating to something that's more basic than what you're saying. The absence of you can find anybody that's against the system. The hardcorest person that you can find will still be part of an order system, and they need the structure. It doesn't matter if you disagree with the United States structure, create your own, and you're going to be a part of it because you need it, because your being wants structure. It doesn't matter where you fall. If you're a gangbanger, it doesn't matter if you know the Constitution or not. You're still going to be attracted to some sort of an order.
Yeah, that's what I say about these ferry motorcyclist people. I mean, all these guys, they have not told what order they have to ride their motorcycles in. And I'm like looking at these guys going, you guys are women. So it's like whatever. Okay. I mean, but I guess there's a need because I follow my own self. I'm my own idol, and I don't even find anybody come close. So whatever it is that this social contract that you're talking about is beyond my comprehension. Because I cannot.
Well, no, it's not.
I can't imagine anybody telling me what to do. Never.
You would find yourself if you were one of the alpha males selected for a study, and you had to stay in a room with 9 other alpha males. There's going to be a dominance hierarchy that's apparent to you at some point, you're either going to be a part of it or you're going to disassociate with it.
I will be the top alpha male, though. Yeah, you're missing the point completely.
See, I'm wondering how long you would last because if you have only alpha males to choose from. No, I'm not saying anything derogatory. I'm just wondering how long it would take for you to either disassociate with it or accept some sort of a compromise with the situation.
Not in the real world. You can't walk away when there's assholes present. You have to fight back.
You don't even know where I've been, huh?
I know that you're a lobbyist, so you must have some degree of fighting control and tenacity, but on the show you can't just say blanket all. You gotta you have to state your view.
I'm not saying that. I'm saying my brethren are saying that. My brethren are saying I'm staying at home, smoking me some joints, drinking some wine, listening to
you're not.
Lisa Franklin.
You don't smoke joints.
I'm saying my brethren. I said my multicolored brethren would rather be doing that, collecting money off of their bitches like they're supposed to, and doing whatever we need to do to make it to the new day. That's how it is.
You're only saying that to shock people.
Yeah, I'm not. Honey, got half of the. We got 43 people, 43% of America that qualify for child food stamps.
Isn't that great?
Programs, SNAP programs. We're talking
what
about
a safety net.
20. Yeah, we're talking about 23% of the population on some form of welfare. We've got every corporation in the book getting welfare. They're all on welfare. Everybody's on welfare.
Guess what Rush Limbaugh said today? Guess what Rush Limbaugh said today on the air? He said that people making $70,000 qualify for a subsidy. Wait, he said people making $70,000 qualify for subsidies under Obamacare. Maybe they do if they have 4 kids, but I make $42,000 a year and I don't qualify for any subsidies. So
that's because
Rush
you haven't found the stuff you have been looking for.
There's no subsidies if you make over $40,000. You have to pay your premium through your employer and a high deductible.
Whatever. Bottom line is that that's Rush Limbaugh. Rush Limbaugh is a fat piece of crap. All right.
Yeah, I'm not a fan either.
But that's only because he's Rush Limbaugh. He's put himself in that position. I wouldn't make a judgment like that. But if I was a persistent drug abuser and I was, a bad father and all that other crap, I'd say I was, Rush Limbaugh.
It's not a safety net; it's a fishing net.
Why does the black community have to have a crutch? I don't understand why they should have something they should blame on.
Because we
write the laws. Why do they need a crutch instead of working within the system? I mean, my family's Greek American. My family came through Ellis Island, and they only spoke Greek. And yeah, they were picked on and everything else. But they worked hard.
Mike John's daughter has a Juris Doctor degree from. Is it Notre Dame? Notre Dame? Don, or what?
That's outstanding.
What is it? Anyway,
Purdue?
Mike.
Where does your daughter have a Juris Doctor from? Purdue?
No, DePaul. But
okay, so his daughter's a lawyer from a top university. They didn't hang on to. His wife has a pension from AT&T. They're not money-grubbing welfare suckers.
Wait, no.
He said that they didn't write the law.
Let me ask you, because nobody wants to live in America. We don't want to live here. This is not our country. These are not our names.
You have the freedom to do what you want.
My name is not my last name.
Then why don't you go? Leave.
Because we still have to fight.
Even if he wanted to leave, he couldn't leave. It's like you'd have to be.
It's hard to leave when we have to leave all these white. When we used to wipe their motherfucking white man's ass, literally. We'd sit there in the toilet and wipe.
So we're gonna pay for that.
So it's very, very difficult to move from a place that you have learned to live in after you've gone so intimate into the business of the land.
I think you've learned to hate America, and that has nothing to do with what really happened. I think that's what you chose to take from history. And if your daughter has a doctorate's degree, that means that everything that you've said about the white man's country is wrong.
No, it's not wrong. You have to live. You have to change from within. Do you know that Obama had Bill Ayers and all those guys? I'm living there. I'm cheering for the Madison 4. The bombing of the Madison dormitories. The riots at Kent State. Those things were my generation people who were doing those things.
You better hope and pray that it doesn't come down to it, because you said for defending yourselves in the street, if the silent majority that's out in the street ever motivates and gets out there, you're not going to have a chance. You understand that? Never mind the government. The silent majority
cares about
those
evil, but
because I'll tell you,
that's what I was alluding to that earlier, Mike. That when if those Trump people get really pissed off and they feel like he's being mistreated, watch out. And Don, by the way, Madison in Madison, it was in It was in '68, and they bombed the draft board office near the UW-Madison campus. It wasn't the dorms.
No, that was the dorms. Where was the dorms?
I think you're talking about. I don't know what you're talking about, but
no,
I'm taking a potty break. You guys wrap it up.
All right. Well, bottom line is that no black man in his right mind wants to join in this madness. Never did. There's no reason for it.
So Herman Cain and Ben Carson. Herman Cain and Ben Carson. What do you think?
Have you ever heard of the term Uncle Tom?
Wow, really? You're gonna disown those two people from your design culture of your dominance hierarchy that you interpret?
Pretty much.
That's pretty bad.
When they turn their back on the black culture, I just came from the then there's no help.
What do you mean turn their back?
You have to bless them.
Have you ever heard of Mrs. Waters from California?
I've met Mrs. Waters several times. That's why I moved from California. So because I'm starting.
So
to get
you don't think she's turned her back on your people?
She has. That's not her.
Is she an Uncle Tom?
No. Maxine is.
So what's worse?
What do you mean? What's worse?
What's worse, her or the Uncle Tom?
The Uncle Tom's.
The Uncle Tom has your best interest in mind, without all the propaganda. That's why he was disowned, because he doesn't fall in line.
Well, you talk about Ben, or you talk about, because Ben has no, he's not qualified for shit, and then especially for HHH. But we're talking about if you're talking about Supreme Court Judge Thomas. Judge Thomas hasn't said a damn thing. He only made one public opinion made in any of his decisions in the last, now it's going on 11 years. He hasn't done.
So basically, what you're saying is somebody with a lower IQ, someone with a lower IQ with more loyalty to your views is a better candidate.
I don't care about my views. I'm out here, like you said, I'm a lobbyist. I have to take into account all sides of the story, and then formulate my own conclusion. And
that doesn't sound like all sides of nothing. It sounds like one side of everything.
But you're anti-America, and you're blaming us for everything that the black man has gone through going back to the 1800s.
Yeah, well, the bottom line is that
I wasn't around. I wasn't born back then. I had nothing to do with it. Neither did none of us did. But we're being blamed for something that you're using as a crutch. You weren't even around back then when all that crap happened, and there were mistakes that were made. But we're still being blamed for it. But you're using it to justify your position. Okay, then I'll tell you what. You want one? I was just thinking about this the other day. You have a tribe from Africa that moved over to an island called North Sentinel Island. Look it up, in the Indian Ocean. That tribe has not been touched for 60 years. What have they accomplished? They haven't been touched by civilization. For 60 years, they're still wearing loincloths. Take a look at them. What have they accomplished?
They're the happiest people on earth.
Oh, you got it. And they've got nothing. And India just passed a law. You're not allowed to even go near it. You can't fish within 3 miles of the island. They don't want anybody touching it, because every time anyone goes near it, they come out with spears and stuff and arrows and attack you. So they just leave it alone. The island is left alone, but it's not progressing at all. Over 60,000 years, they said. It's been untouched.
What's wrong with
people.
That? What's wrong with
that? That's not. What have they progressed? So if you're telling me that black pride, we don't need anything in the American laws, and the white man did this, and the white man did that. Okay, then maybe we should pull out of Africa.
From suicides because they can't handle this culture.
Right.
They can't handle this. They can't handle what's going on. All the information going through. They can't handle it, so they're committing suicide. They're doing school shootings. I'd rather be in a loincloth on an island that can't be touched, living happy and fucking, than
you wouldn't. You wouldn't, Don, because you know the difference now. You grew up where you grew up, how you grew up. This is what you know. And I can see it from both sides too. I can see this from both sides. I can put myself in both perspectives on this.
All the time.
Let me. Okay, I'm not being disrespectful at all. I can see this from both sides. I see a tribe, an isolated tribe, and basically the whole surrounding world knows about this isolated tribe. They might not know about every single country. They might not know how many countries there are, but they have a way of life. And if you study them in psychology, they might be healthier than we are. And
exactly.
We are protecting their island. We're protecting their culture. We're protecting their food source, and we're staying out of it. That's fine. Doesn't mean that they are their opinion doesn't matter in the global spectrum. There has to be somebody that makes a decision to save their way of life. So how is that beneficial to survival? You're counting on other people's charity.
No, they live on their own.
No, a decision was made to preserve their way of life.
Right, but their way of life is one of those things that, like natural geographic. You know, you're talking about you are a study as opposed, and you are the life. You are what they're studying. You are the science project or the science that everybody's looking at if you're in that pure natural state. So, you know, bottom line is that, you know, so we're talking about that is the essence of all of life. When you are,
that's not the
people,
essence of power, and power retains life.
Power?
So what I'm getting at is if the island that they're living on was a mountain of gold, how long do you think their civilization would be allowed to live? And how could they defend themselves against it? Zero chance. They would lose it.
Right.
If they were sitting on gold, they'd be gone.
They've got it so far. There's something there. I'm sure there's something that would be worthwhile there, whether it's rare monkeys or whatever. Something's got.
And the only thing stopping them from being overrun is other people saying you just can't do that. No, United States, no, Germany or whoever, you can't just go there and take their island because it's culture. But that's not to say that they're powerful enough to defend themselves after all this time.
The only thing is that kind of idyllic lifestyle that Jane was quoting, Walden Pond earlier and things like that. You know, you're looking at a utopia, a desire to live in total freedom and oneness with nature.
I'm not. You're the one that said that you wanted to be in a loincloth.
All right.
Hey, man.
The African culture and what it's done and how it doesn't need the white man's laws and the white man's names. You even said that, the names. This isn't my name.
Yeah, but we've gotten whiteified. And so what
really?
we're doing absolutely.
Okay.
We're wearing pants now.
Yeah, with all our medicine stuff.
We've got
Don.
pants. What?
We have a guest caller who just wants to say hi to everybody. He came out of purgatory. 1 second. Say hi.
No.
It's got to be John.
Hello, all you political gravity people.
See,
what's up, John?
We've been talking about this exact subject, where doggone the white lady just brings
Did you hear
up
him?
stuff.
John, they're saying hi to you.
Hi.
Actually not. Let me call in direct. That way
You can call in. It's already after the cutoff time. Oh, wait, let me... wait, no, you can call in.
Hey, John, you're late.
It's after the cutoff time. Next week, okay, you guys, he wants to say hi, but he can't hear you, so just say 2 or 3 more things, John, and then you'll have to call back in next week.
Yes, I have some friends of mine, and they've been watching a lot of 9/11 conspiracy stuff. And it's kind of interesting how fast the towers went down, like in free fall, like a demo. And it looks like some of the metal just dissolves into dust. I've read some other stuff where that's the concrete. All the discussion that it wasn't hard enough for them to collapse. So I'm wondering if that might be, when 9/11 comes up, if that might be an interesting subject to delve into.
Ben's brought it up before on the show about the metal structure. So I only have John in purgatory one more week. As long as he doesn't bring up my highly charged sex life, he can call the show back.
Oh, Jesus.
Well, very controversial. I might leave that to the experts. I'm not an expert in any field, so but we'll just let God take control of the wheel and the phone digits.
Okay, we'll decide in the future. Goodbye, John. We'll call you next week. Bye-bye. Okay, you guys, you just wanted to say hi. I think I was holding the phone in the wrong spot, so you might have missed some of the stuff he said.
You did that on purpose.
No, I didn't. I'm just technologically incompetent.
I heard enough. I heard.
Okay, so anyways, you guys, so we still have the caller on the line, and we've been on the air almost 2 hours, so can we do our conclusion?
Yeah, close it down. I want to thank you guys for having me on. It was great talking with everyone and very interesting. And I hope you had a great weekend, and hopefully we'll see you again soon.
Yeah, I should
call.
By the way, Mike, you called the show before, Mike, because I remember you called a long time ago, and we talked about the Northridge quake. Because I lived in Reseda, right next door to Granada Hills. John lived in Pasadena before he moved in. We air Sunday nights at 11 p.m. Central, so feel free to call in any other night. Okay?
Oh, how's the racetrack doing in Pasadena? Is it still intact, or did they rip it down yet?
Well, he moved to Reno, so he doesn't know.
You're talking about Santa Anita.
Oh, Santa Anita. I was wondering if they ripped it down, or somebody told me they were going to take it down. I hope not.
No, I don't think they ripped it down, because I was in L.A. in June.
That was Hollywood Park. Hollywood Park.
Good. Oh, okay.
Did you hear me, Mike?
Yep, I heard you. Hollywood Park. Yes.
Right.
Yep, I heard you.
I gave up gambling for Jesus, so I don't know anymore.
We know.
It's not about gambling. It's about racing. Rubbing is racing.
I know, but I know someone who got addicted to gambling by first betting at that park.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
well, no, I wasn't a gambler.
And he's in my Gamblers Anonymous group.
Now he's paying taxes.
I used to play for a Greek band that did the Greek festival in Santa Anita every year. We played for the festival.
Really?
So that's how I remember the park. I never went there during a race.
Cool. That's an interesting story. Well, feel free to call back in some other Sunday night. We do have some recurring callers, including the Sasquatch Society.
All right.
I'm making a joke.
Talk to you all later.
No, we did have the Sasquatch Society call in once. Probably from Ben's neck of the woods.
All right. I'll see you all later.
Okay, bye, Mike.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
I'm getting ready to go, too. So I will give you a call later on.
Okay, well, I'm going to be in bed in an hour, but you can call me later if you want, Don. Bye-bye.
All right, babe. Bye-bye. Bye,
See you, Don.
Okay, Ben and Albert, I do have a formal conclusion because I was going to bring up a topic that got overlooked halfway through the discussion. So who wants to go first for the conclusion?
I'm good.
I can.
Right.
So, yeah.
Okay, go ahead, Ben,
Sasquatch.
and thank you for contributing, Albert, by the way. Go ahead, Ben.
Living in Sasquatch country, I've been everywhere where Sasquatch should be, and I've never seen them. I have to, I have to laugh when people say they've seen them because I don't care if they really have. I just haven't. But I've been scared to death because of. I've been scared to death before, and this will be my conclusion, but it's a story. So I went up fishing, just me and my dog, and I left after work, but it took me like 3 hours to get everything loaded up, and I took off and went way up into the mountains, no cell phone reception. And when I got there, it was pitch black. There was not a moon or anything. It was just, and you have to hike down to this lake. Like, the road is way up high, and the lake's way down there. So, and it's almost straight down. And when I shut the lights off and got out, I've done that 2 different times. One by myself with the dog, and then one with the kids. And it was pitch black both times. And I noticed when I was just by myself with the dog, I could hear every single noise all around me. I was freaked out. But when I was with the kids, I was the father figure, so I wasn't scared at all. I don't know what the difference is, but
I think part of it is you have like this natural instinct to protect what's around you, and you're also sort of distracted. But what were you scared of when you were just with the dog?
It was just kind of odd that there was noises all around me. So where you park on the road, it's like a wide spot in the road, and the lake was to the left, and there was a mountaintop to the right. So if you hike straight up for like a couple hundred yards, you'd be at the top of a mountain. So that was on the right, and the lake was down to the left. Everything was pitch black. And I would hear a noise, and I'd shine the light over there, see nothing. And I'd hear a noise behind me, and I'd shine the light behind me and see nothing. And it was like something was playing games with me, because everywhere I'd shine the light, the noise would be behind me. So that's what freaked me out. And it sounded big enough to break branches. Like something was snapping branches, and every time I shined the light, I'd hear it again behind me. So
it could have just been an animal.
Well, it would have had to have been 2 animals, because there's no way that anything could have gotten
so loud.
Past the light. Right.
I guess
it was actually. But
I have one reason why I think you're scared, because during our normal life, we live in a controlled environment. Like you might hear a rustle outside or like a garbage can being kicked over, but when you're out in the elements and you don't have good vision, like your imagination can run wild. Who knows what was out there? It might have been a bear or a deer or an elk, and it is scary, but it's also because you're not used to that environment.
Well, I am used to nature, but this was just an odd experience that I had. It was, as soon as I shut the truck off and got outside, and it was just pitch black. I mean, there were stars, but there was no moon. So it was just black everywhere. And
I had a similar experience. I was trying to get to Victorville one time from Big Bear, and I was trying to use the back roads because there was a fire on the Cajon Pass, which is the main freeway thoroughfare to the desert cities. And I got really super lost in Big Bear, and then I actually saw a baby bear on the side of the road, and I was thinking, what if I run out of gas? Because I was on numerous mountain roads in the middle of nowhere, and I was just scared. And luckily, I just decided to get the hell out of Big Bear and drove downhill and found my way back, even though I was halfway to Lucerne, I think it's called. And I just ended up going back down the hill to L.A. because I freaked out. But I'm sure everybody's had similar experiences. So, Albert, did you want to say any last words? I think you said no, right?
No, I'm good.
Okay, well, my conclusion is that I like the caller, and by the way, you guys, he has called before and told us that exact same story about he helped this guy out during the Northridge quake when people were looting and he had guns, and the guy ended up borrowing a gun. So it was the same caller, the same story. But halfway through the discussion, somebody brought up, we were talking about the Voting Rights Act before he called in. It was June 26, 2013 that it got the core of that Voting Rights Act of 65 that had been renewed and protected by the feds for over 30 years was some of the fundamental things were changed. And Ruth Bader Ginsburg said the first-generation barriers to ballot access is now a second-generation barrier, which and what the major changes were is that when states changed voting procedures, they used to have to consult the Justice Department or the federal courts before making the changes. And now there were 9 states during this Supreme Court ruling that they're able to change voting procedures, redrawing districts like gerrymandering. Albert talks about that a lot, and polling places. And it's not just the federal identification thing. It's a lot of other minor things where they could change a polling place at the drop of a hat and somebody's not going to know where to go. Or in Wisconsin, they made the same state voter ID law the same, but then they didn't have enough Department of Motor Vehicles to supply people with last-minute IDs, and that whole thing got fucked up. So I'm just bringing it up briefly that it was
let me ask
sometimes.
A question about that.
Yeah.
Why would you wait till the last minute? Why would you have to wait till the last minute on a voting year to get an ID?
Well, I didn't say it right. Okay, I live less than a mile from the state of Wisconsin. I live right across the border, actually 2 miles. So what happened is 60 days before the election, more and more people were coming in there. You know, they expected to get their picture within a week or 10 days, and there were one function of the machine broke down. Like I don't know how many places it broke down, but it ended up being a glitch, and they had to modify the law again to accommodate the voters. If somebody comes in 10 days before the elections expecting an ID, that is ridiculous. But some people were trying to get IDs like 60 to 90 days before the election, and we're still having problems later on.
Because I guess the only reason why I say that was because I didn't use a fancy voting machine when I voted, but I was surprised when all I had to do was flash my ID. I was actually surprised at the amount of time that the person looked at it. Like, I don't know what she could have read, but she looked at it and gave it back to me. I'm like, are you kidding? That's all you have to do to vote?
Well, in Minnesota, all you have to do is say, if you're a registered voter, like all I had to say is my name and my address, and then they checked my name off. They didn't even ask for an ID.
Well, right here where I live, right here in Palm Desert, California, right here, you know, it's funny because when I get pulled over by the police, I can actually, you know, by law right here in the valley, it's okay to literally show my California ID to the police officer when I get pulled over on my smartphone. That, you know, without having really to pull out my ID, I can just show them on my smartphone, like, here's my ID, you can see it from my phone, you know. And when I go to vote, you know, like, you know, publicly on the voting booths, they won't even allow to show your ID on the smartphone. You have to literally show them the ID card, you know. And it's like, okay, so it's okay for the police, but not for when you're voting.
Yeah, well, you know, anything can be forged. I mean, we've learned that after looking at all of the fake documents and the ways of making fake IDs and fake passports. Everything can be forged, but the IDs themselves, they can be verified.
Well, I didn't want to open up a new can of worms. I was just saying that.
Sorry.
The whole gist of the Voting Rights Act modification is that some states can change the rules. They don't need federal, like oversight. But it's going to cause problems in some areas, but hopefully not a lot. But Judge Roberts felt like that enough time had passed since 1965 that most people will be able to vote effectively. But as we saw in election 2000 in Gore v. Bush, that Catherine Harris she modified the felony. Like if your name was John Michael Johnson and you committed a felony, and a guy named John Morris Johnson walked in there to try to vote, some innocent people's name were on the felony roster that never committed a felony. So in the state of Florida in 2000, it was an issue.
And let me mention about that. You got to have your ID to vote, because in California, it's actually stop an ID state where you have to let the police pull you over and they want your California ID. You have to show it to them by law. Compared to other states, there's not a stop an ID.
Well, let me just end. You guys have been on the air. Good point, Albert. You've been on the air 2 hours. My last point is a week ago Thursday, I got my new license picture taken in the Minnesota DMV, and I got the ID in the mail 8 days later, including the weekend. So it only took like 5 business days to get my Minnesota license. But you guys, thanks for being generous host to Mike. I think in some ways he was kind of trying to imply that we didn't know our stuff, but hopefully he was impressed with us. And I'm going to end the show with one of John's songs. So thanks for being a part of the show, and we'll see you next week if everybody's around, okay?
All right, thank you. And I should be.
Yep. All right, God bless you all, and text me during the week, Ben. But I'll try to read that article you sent. And Albert,
all right,
you can text me too if you want. Okay? All right. Have a good one, everyone. Bye.
All right.
Bye.
Good night.
That's the game of life. That's the game of life.